Welcome back to Level 1 Restoration Behind the Scenes. We're going to take another look at the 55 American Graffiti car. This will be the second video in a series that we'll just do a whole bunch of them to update everyone throughout the whole course of this restoration. But after our first video, we got a ton of cool feedback and a lot of new information. We went out and was able to buy some parts and get some parts and have some things sent to us. It's been wonderful, so we thought we would share all of this new and cool information with everyone that's interested in this car. And so I'm here with Jeff again today, and we're going to talk about some really cool people that stepped up to help us out. We have people that just came out of the woodwork, previous owners, a guy that took a bunch of cool photographs back in the 70s. I have a guy that's going to make the mold for the correct hood scoop for us. We're searching for wheels. We have a lead on some stuff. So anyway, we'll get into some specifics here. And then we're going to take a look at the underneath of this car, which we haven't even done.
We haven't even looked at.
We've never even looked at the underneath of this car yet. We pushed it around and we've never had it on a lift yet. So you guys will be the first to see the underneath of this car. And there's some specific fun stuff to talk about in regards to the underneath of the rear end. So I guess to get things going, one of the first things we connected with Steve Fitch.
Steve Fitch, yes. He's been great. Steve Fitch hopefully has a book coming out, and he's going to have lots and lots of pictures. I hope he does that, but they're all proprietary, so we can't use them. But he was a great historian, and he documented that car like there's no tomorrow.
So he owned this car way back when, right?
Way back when. He basically not bought it from the studio, but basically from the first studio people, if you want to call it that. He was the first legitimate owner, I'll say. He had it for, what, 7, 8 years or so?
Okay, yeah.
He was really good at documenting this thing. He was really good. So he's been able to give us lots of good information. One of the great pieces of information he got us was the door panels were 56 210s. So we were able to find some 56 210 door trim on eBay. And with some reproduction door panels painted black, they're going to look great.
Yeah, so that was pretty quick. We didn't know. I mean, we might have ultimately figured it out, right? But that just expedited our knowledge, just like that.
Instantly. When Steve sold the car, he sold it with the Graph 55 license plate that he had made for it, a personalized plate, and he was always sorry he lost it.
That was a Kansas plate.
The Kansas plate. Everybody's probably familiar with it off of pictures. But he and I were talking, he said he'd love to get that back. And in the conversation, he said he had the original trunk handles or knobs. And we just kind of went back and forth and said it'd be great to do a trade. And so Steve got his license plate, and we got the original knobs off the deck lid for the car.
So, and if you don't know exactly what Jeff's talking about here, that was a lightweight fiberglass trunk lid. They had to have a way to pick it up, right? You couldn't fit your fingers down in the seam there. And that is literally a household item.
A household item, a drawer pull. Steve took them off because he put hood pins in their locations because he wanted the deck lid to stay nice and tight, not flop around, and just hung on to them all these years. And so fortunately, we have them back, or the car has them back.
And I'd like to give this second shout out to Steve. I received this package when it came in the mail. You could have dropped it off the Empire State Building. It was a phenomenal job. And that right there tells you what kind of a guy Steve is, right there. An amazing job of packaging it.
He really cared about the car, its parts.
Everything.
Then now it doesn't matter.
And he spent a lot of time. He's been very gracious with his time.
Yes.
He and Jeff has had some really good conversations. And we're just learning stuff like crazy. So Jeff here, everyone here is really excited about this. He brought in some dash pieces that we'll be able to use. That these literally have been around your life since when?
Before me, my dad killed a 55 Chevy for a 32 Ford project, and these have just been laying around
off in a box somewhere.
And so we don't want reproduction stuff. We don't want shiny new plastic on the dash and knobs. So anything that's missing or wrong with these pieces, we can hopefully restore with these used pieces.
Another thing that we've, out at the Muscle Car and Corvette National Show and people we've been talking to, we've been learning about the Earhart disc brakes.
Yes.
So we don't have everything we need.
Nope.
We have this one, which is another eBay score.
So Donald Sprague, who's a friend of Walt Bailey, was gracious enough to send us a gas cap that's supposed to be the identical twin to the one that was in the trunk, the fictional gas cap. And he has done incredible research for us and found this lone caliper. The early ones, which this car had, are Earharts, not Hurst Earharts. And the early ones are 4 pistons, like this one, and the late ones, I think, are only 1 or possibly 2. I don't want to lie to you.
So we need 3 more of those?
We need 1 more.
One
the
more
rear is complete.
Okay.
We need 1 more for the front.
So, if anyone's out there watching this video, they got a stash of Earhart disc brake calipers.
We're interested.
We'd like to get that from you. Another fun item there, we learned early on that the car had a Corvair steering box.
An aluminum Corvair box.
Yeah, so lightweight, tiny in design. And so I got the best one I could find, basically.
You can clearly see the front of it in old photos hanging under the car. You can clearly see this is what it had. So that's nice to get that back. Not a terribly hard piece, but it's sure neat to already have it and start to work around it.
That's right. We'll have that rebuilt and it'll look, I don't want to make it too awful shiny, I guess. But
no, it'll look like it just came out of a '69 Corvair.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about the dash. We had our own confusion in the dash. Oh, and there's one other little thing we have, I don't know where it's at right now, is we've since gotten a steering wheel for it. Or maybe we had that.
I haven't seen that. Okay.
We have a steering wheel that's exactly like the one in the movie. I don't know that it's as old as 1970, though. So if there was such a thing as a new old stock steering wheel,
we would be interested.
even though this looks exactly the same,
But if there was a real one, a dated one, we would love to have that.
Even if it wasn't perfect, I think that would be fitting.
Nope. A nice, clean, used one would be awesome.
So, but back to the dash on this car.
So Steve Fitch horrified me when he said that the 4 gauge holes in the dash were there prior to it becoming a 2-lane blacktop car. So when he got it, it just had a piece of tin going across the dash, being held in place by the speedometer bezel and the radio pieces and so forth.
So was that like a factory 210 piece of trim or just a piece of tin?
Just a piece of tin.
Okay, just a fabricated piece of metal.
Just a fabricated piece of metal. And maybe that's why the dash was gloss black, flat black, gloss black, because it probably still had its original dash paint on it, but it had these gigantic holes in it. Or something like that, I'm only assuming.
So they just cut out a piece of sheet metal just to make it go away.
Covered it up, which is interesting because Rich Ruth was going to build this car as his own race car, and he thought that was a terrible idea to have the gauges in the dash.
Oh,
obviously, because he put the gauges underneath, he put 2 gauges underneath the dash and a tack up on the dash, right? So he must have not liked the dash gauges at all. I applaud him for that.
Yeah, well, he had his way, he wanted to do it. So I guess so. Then the one guy that I talked to out of the St. Louis area that's going to make us a mold for the Scoop, he believes he has a set of the Daisy wheels with a 5-on-5 bolt pattern that we can have in the trunk under the tonneau cover, which really won't be seen, but I really like the idea of having it as close to how they were filming it as possible.
Yes.
So we do want those 5-on-5 Daisy wheels for the trunk, but for this car, we still need a set of 5-on-5 chrome reverse in 15s.
Yes.
And are the fronts 15s too then?
They're 15s, they have to be to clear the calipers.
Right. So that's a regular GM 4 3/4 on 5 bolt pattern in chrome reverse. We've got nothing. I mean, I think we could make them, but it would be nice to find some.
To find the right appliances or JCPenney's or whatever they were.
Right. So yeah, you're just your typical chrome reverse wheel basically in 15-inch. But 2 different bolt patterns.
But 2 different patterns.
Yeah. So
mentioning the wheels, I got from Steve Fitch also, we all thought that when the wheels in the trunk got sold, that it left with M&H Racemasters. It did not. It left with the street tires from 2-lane blacktop.
Okay.
Not terribly important, but it's fact.
Yeah, we were thinking the slicks were in the trunk.
The slicks were in there, but no, the street tires were on the 200Ss.
I think I even said that, yeah, but it was tires. Okay.
So.
So that's what we'll put back in there, just like that. So another fun thing that we learned from Steve was that he made the repair to the floor where the drive shaft came up through the floor when James Taylor dumped the clutch in reverse. So he'll never live that down. So he literally pounded that down and welded a patch.
Welded the
over it.
patch that's still there over it.
So we think in the movie, the whole time that was happening, that was still just a blown out hole in there. So I want to cut the patch out
And
and
blow
the damage back up in there.
Yep.
So I think that's pretty neat. It's not really something people would typically see, but in our photos and things like that we take this car when it's all done and restored, that'll be something we can include.
And it's history. We can't erase that.
And very cool history.
Very cool history at that.
I mean, this is definitely a great piece of automotive American history.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and that's just another fun piece of that history. So, so I guess, I mean, can you think of any other parts that we bought or that we're still looking for that certainly we already talked about the brakes. Talk about the intake manifold on this.
Okay, so we definitely have a replacement intake. It's the right GM part number, but Steve Fitch mentioned that when he got the car, the intake had been heliarched and it was a mess. It was not attractive. So
Cracked and repaired.
he's not the kind of guy who's going to put up with that. So he went and found the same part numbered intake and put it on there. Now I believe this is that intake when Walt Bailey went and retrieved it from the body shop.
Okay. Yeah.
But we've seen that there are two different intakes with the same part number. So if anybody can tell us what might have been an over-the-counter, a production motor intake, which one we need to be looking for.
So what he had was maybe a photograph of that?
He sent us a Craigslist type ad.
Oh, okay.
And I went and looked at this one, and although they're the same part number, they're different intakes.
Oh, okay.
So we just need to find out which one's more authentic to a crate motor, what would have come out of a GM box.
Okay, yeah, just a little bit of research needed then, and we'll figure out. And we might as well have as close as we can get, of course.
Yes.
Right? So the
yes.
carburetor is an over-the-counter L88
And we have that, correct?
carburetor, yep.
Yep.
And everything will be, there's wonderful pictures of the engine in two-lane blacktop. Of course, there's none in American Graffiti. But so it will be exactly like two-lane blacktop minus the tunnel ram and dual quads with the addition of the L88 intake and carburetor.
Yes.
Valve covers, headers,
Yep.
everything else. Radiator
All the same.
steering,
Fan,
nothing
green
changed.
fan, lovely green fan.
Yeah. So that'll be kind of fun. And so, we can't help but tell the two-lane blacktop story along with the American Graffiti story. In fact, the guy that had reached out to me from the last video from St. Louis, he has I'm going to buy a really nice tunnel ram and two 600s from him.
Okay.
Restored up, and then we'll just have that along with the car.
Right, it stays with the car. It's
Just to
part
show
of its
it,
history. How
Make
neat
it-
is that?
Yeah, make a display out of it.
Yeah.
Another fun interaction was a guy that, I'm sorry I don't have his name right now, but a guy that helps organize or is just highly involved in the car show out in Petaluma. I believe that's the last weekend in May every year, and so there'll be a whole gathering of these replica cars. And it is our intention that when this car is done, we hope maybe we can get the 58, and that's the guy is not too far away from there with the 32. So I mean, we're really hoping. I'll just put the word out there right now. I mean, a couple of years from now, we're looking for a reunion.
That would be phenomenal.
As cool as we can
That would
get.
be phenomenal.
Okay, we've got the 55 lifted up. We're looking at this for the first time ever. We haven't seen any of this stuff yet, so. Well, what I see right away is that middle owner or the third owner or whatever in the 90s painted the whole entire underneath of this thing like a gray color. So outside of the specifics, we'll just touch on that really quick. What we plan on doing is what literally Richard Ruth would have had to work with when he was building this car for two-lane blacktop, which would have been a stock, rust-free California 55.
Used car.
Yeah. So, we can't make it look like a used car. That doesn't make sense, but we will make it a stock 55 Chevy. So it'll be red oxide. And did we ever know what color this car was when it was?
I don't know what color this car
we don't.
is.
Maybe
Rich might, but I
Yeah.
don't. There's no tag, and there's so many layers of paint that no one can
Doesn't
determine
matter.
what.
Yeah.
But it'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
I'd like to
know.
red oxide the underside of this once it's rust-free and clean, and we've removed all the holes that shouldn't be here and left all the holes that should.
Yeah.
From when Rich Ruth did his job. And red oxide it, overspray it with whatever color the car would have been,
Right.
and then use a torch to open all the holes back up and burn all the paint off the edges.
Right.
And then I don't know if we have to throw some slop on it or go drive it around, but
Yeah, to make it look right. And so this would be the ladder bar suspension here, which would have been how it was.
the ladder bars look like they're potentially old.
Yeah.
Right. We got good old welds on the axle and stuff, but we know Rich Ruth has had this car back in his possession. Did axle work, subframe work, stub frame, but this looks new.
Yeah.
It looks like there's lots of new work under here.
And we wouldn't have known what the guy maybe this was compromised or how it might have been changed. That we don't know. We just know that Delmer hired Richard Ruth to put it right back to how it was. And we do know this is the original rear end. Clearly these are Tri-5 Chevy relief springs, yep. So I recognize those. So there's the rear Earhart brakes that we have in place, which is really awesome.
Wonderful. Yeah. Looking at brake lines and stuff, I'm curious as to what Rich would have done. Again, I just have to talk to him. What he would have done with wiring and brake lines, and if he would have reused any of it or scrapped it all and started over. But clearly all of this is new.
Yes. So yeah, if it's a matter of getting original or reproduction 55 Chevy stuff, we have, I doubt if we would take used stuff, but I mean, we do have the option of local junkyards and wrecking yards that have quite a lot of Tri-5 Chevy stuff in them still.
Yeah.
So that might be helpful for something, I don't know what, at some point. But you can see here, just a made cross member.
Yeah, that's new, obviously.
Yep. For the rock crusher. I don't know why that had to been. We really don't know what happened to it in Maryland exactly for this stuff to have to be redone. But we do know that he put it back to how he had it in the first place. Anything he might have had to have done.
You can see the floors have quite a life.
Yeah.
Lots of holes welded shut, lots of dents and dings, and lots of work.
Nice prep job there.
So yeah, back here where the drive shaft would have come through, right? It's all bondoed over right now, but we'll expose all that and push it back through.
We'll have it all completely bead blasted, and we will have to undo the roll bar to separate it from the frame. So I just don't see any way to do a nice job without taking the car off
the car has to come apart, but we can cut the roll bar, seam it, put a sleeve in it.
Yeah.
Shut it right down on it. It'll be perfect.
Yep, and there's plenty of room down here, and we'll, that'll all be under the tonneau cover anyway. So, a little bit of something going on there, a little bit of rust maybe, I guess, or just from where he cut the old roll bar. I don't know what, but it'll all become a lot more clear once the thing is completely bead blasted and bare metal again.
I know the quarter panel over here, an axle broke on the left wheel and took out the quarter panel. I've seen pictures of it from Steve, and it was pretty ugly. And now looking up in there, it's surprisingly decent. So
pretty good job.
Pretty good job of repairing a very damaged quarter panel. So hopefully, when it's all stripped, it'll.
Actually, we can actually get a pretty cool look at the inside of how the wheel flares were made. I mean, there's only so much you can do, right?
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah, I'm sure, but a lot of guys that have replicated this car, I'm sure would love to have a look at the real car there, just to see what they did. It just looked like they took a nice big piece of metal and, made the cut and welded it all up and did the flare, and really fun to see. Looks like some fancy polished stainless gas straps, no doubt wasn't a part of it.
Don't know why it has a stainless trunk floor, but it doesn't need it. The trunk floor is actually really nice.
Right, it's in
solid.
good shape. So this must have been part of the show car
mirrors,
theme and whatever, I'm sure, when they had this, which again is, we'll just chalk that up to the 1990s.
We'll use all stock hardware on it, all nice and freshly plated. Get rid of the hardware stuff where, well, there'd be no reason for it to have hardware. Rich was a pretty crafty guy. He wouldn't have lost hardware, so.
Right, yeah, just, and fortunately we have him.
Fortunately, we have him.
That is the blessing of that he is in good health and is lucid. More than likely didn't have a chrome starter like it has now.
You can see someone tried to fill the frame to make it a smooth frame. It's not.
It's not a one, yeah,
It's a two-piece frame.
a two-piecer, yep. And, you know, this is a pretty sweet scatter shield because it has to have the provisions, right?
Yeah,
for,
for the rear mount,
for a
for the
Chevy.
bell housing mount.
Yeah. And then probably, I'll see if I can see a date on it just for the fun of it, but, you know, probably, you know, late 60s.
P1, so that's a 71.
Yep, okay, 661 case, has a VIN number on it there, so a wrecking yard item probably from back in the day. Probably not anything over the counter with what looks like a VIN number. And then a lot of guys are very interested in the, you know, the straight axle, which isn't actually straight. It dips down, otherwise the cars sit really high like a lot of straight axle cars do. But Richard Ruth knew well enough to get this car down so it wasn't all high and out of control. Yeah, absolutely.
Again, Rich was building a race car for himself, and it turned into be a movie car. So
right,
he knew what he was doing.
Some of the yeah, I'm not sure where this would have came in or what the reasoning for this would have been. Why get rid of the Corvair steering box? It's still manual steering. I don't understand that.
So looking at it, I think the radius rods are wrong. I thought it had rounded radius rods in the back that probably would have come to a mount that's no longer here. I swore that it had rounded.
Okay. So we'll go back to our archived
Yeah,
photos.
so we'll look at pictures again.
And, you know, we were lucky enough to find...
Sounds terrible, we're just finding that out now, but...
Right. Well, yeah.
We just don't care about this car.
Yeah, exactly. Has an aluminum flywheel. Who knows? Maybe Richard Ruth would probably know that. Yep, he would probably know right off the bat. I think it's fun that it just has the a pretty thin opening for the shifter. So it was never an inline shifter, which would have taken a great amount of a big hole to accommodate that. It's a nice thin H pattern Hurst Competition Plus shifter with like a bench seat handle on it, so that which we have. So that'll be really neat, and it will fit right in that hole real nice there.
Off topic, but back to Steve Fitch's photos that I hope he publishes, wink wink. Walt and everybody thought that this was a one-wire car, alternator, that it didn't have a voltage regulator, because all the pictures never showed a voltage regulator anywhere. But Steve Fitch sent me a picture that he took looking very down in the engine compartment as opposed to across, and there's a voltage regulator bolted on the frame rail on the side, but it's always obscured by the tire. So that's a great piece of history that nobody knew.
And no photo evidence.
Right, Steve probably knew, but it didn't mean much to him, right?
No.
And so when I saw that, I was amazed, because that's a great piece of evidence that it's not a one-wire car, but it's an actual voltage regulator system. So just a nice piece of history that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, a great detail for us to have done correctly. You never know when someone will come out of the woodwork, like we learned with all these people that came out of the woodwork. They had a little piece of information here or there.
No, people got great information.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. Probably the next thing we will do after this, I'll probably go ahead and get the engine out of this car, and we'll take it down. We want to get the heads. We don't want to leave them polished, because they wouldn't have been polished. So we'll, bead blast them or whatever we need to do to
coarse
make them,
sand or something. Try and bring a finish back, a texture back to them.
And then have the engine gone through and dynoed. So that'll be something to look forward to later this year. And then at that time, Another interesting thing is maybe we could get some help on this. Far as I know, you can't powder coat white headers any longer.
Yeah.
So there was a reason they didn't make this stuff anymore, or I don't know what the problem is, but there's some of that left in this world.
We need white powder coated headers.
Yes.
Help.
So, or a solution for that.
Yeah.
Anything we've tried in the past, it doesn't hold up, and it will yellow. It won't flake off, but it just
yellows
the heat,
immediately.
yeah, the heat gets it, and so that would be another thing that we could still use some help on.
Old school white headers.
Yeah, I mean,
We're using the headers, but we need to plate them. We
exactly.
need to coat them.
And then, do we really know much about the rest of the exhaust on this car?
I don't.
Yeah.
I'm going to rely on Walt, Rich.
Steve, maybe.
Yeah.
That might have still had it.
Yeah, it might have, and he might have some good pictures or thoughts on
Maybe
that.
the Crawford character was the guy before Steve Fitch, I guess.
Yes, Steve Crawford, that's it.
So maybe we have something there that we can tap into. But there you have it. The first look underneath of the American Graffiti 55 Chevy. And we're learning right alongside you folks. So
There's a lot of new and a lot of old, but a lot of work.
absolutely going to be a
Holy cow.
lot of work. And what a wonderful project.
Yeah. Oh, this is great.
So, I mean, I would like just to take a second to thank Phil Mitchell, as the owner of this car, for trusting us with this piece of history. And he really does just turn that over to Jeff and I 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's our thing, and that is something we're really grateful for. Really wonderful customers we have here, and it's always nice just to take a couple minutes and thank them. You know, Phil and Wayne Schmeckley and, you know, some of our guys that we have are just so wonderful, and we're just thrilled to be able to get to do this stuff and bring it to you here on Level 1 Restoration Behind the Scenes. So we appreciate you turning in and watching us get all excited over beat up old floor pans and things like that. So please like and subscribe. We love your comments, and look forward to more videos on this iconic 55 Chevy in the near future.